My name is Tania Rahman from Binghamton University. Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to participate in this debate. This House believes that prisons should not be abolished, that is, completely eliminated. Prisons are a good way to remove criminals from the public until and if they are reformed. Instead of abolishing, we should work to do the following. Reform governmental and authoritative policies so that they stop targeting poor minorities and reinforcing cycles of violence and crime among poverty-ridden parts of the U.S., but keep criminals convicted of violent offenses such as rape and serial killing detained. I define prisons as a physical facility that provides health, education, and other services to individuals convicted of federal offenses while still keeping inmates separated from the public. The only alternative to abolishing my definition of prisons is to let all criminals loose, which would create havoc and increase violence and deaths across the country. Reforming policies is necessary because, according to the Bureau of Justice, over 60% of the current 2.4 million inmates are of minority background. White people are just as guilty of committing the same crimes, but are less targeted because of their skin color and because of racist systems that exist within policymaking. One example is New York City's stop and frisk law, where officers stop young African American and Hispanic men for often no cause and search them. While violent criminals of any race should remain detained, there is no reason to continue targeting minorities because they do not commit crimes any more than other races. I propose keeping the prison system, but improving it so that it provides humanitarian assistance to inmates while still keeping them detained. Many of those imprisoned are violent and incapable of understanding reason, so they must be incapacitated, so abolishing prisons altogether is not a good resolution. In fact, the proposition brings up a New York Times article that proves my point that we should, and quote, treat people while they are incarcerated. The proposition's point is invalid because the Times article backs up the idea that these people should still be in prisons while being provided with more rehab-like assistance. The proposition believes that prisons should be abolished, yet his source suggests otherwise. In fact, since the proposition fails to define what a prison is and uses a source that refutes his claim instead of supporting it, it is conceded that his point of putting criminals into separate housing to contain them away from the public is still, in fact, a prison, according to my definition, and is therefore refuted. The proposition claims that placing a prison near his home would make it unsafe and decrease property value, but his sole family's safety and home value is less important than the safety of the general public and the well-being of millions of others, so my case outweighs. I have two objections to make about the proposition case. Defining a house as one's own physical roof and walls, and proclaiming that it is arbitrary and indisputable, and that one's family will definitely support the proposition stance, is extremely biased and is not inherent to the resolution. The proposition cannot define the house used in debate as a shelter they reside in because it sets up an unfair advantage from the proposition side. The house that the proposition represents would always win because it would consistently vote against the opposition no matter the case. Furthermore, even if the proposition and his family believe in the same idea, they are not a governing body and therefore have no authoritative power to enforce any decision that they believe. According to the University of Vermont, referring to this house refers to a legislative body that actually has the power to pass or deny a decision, and not a physical house, rendering the proposition's claim that refuting his house is incorrect. Since the speaker already defined his idea of the house and plans to stand by it, and his definition is incorrect, any point he makes thereafter cannot be considered because it is invalid. Second, the proposition speaks much too quickly. If this was an in-person debate rather than a recorded one where I have the ability to pause the video, I would be unable to point out any flaws in the proposition's case because I cannot absorb the information. Because he speaks so fast, he also fails to educate the audience. My alternative to abolishing prisons is providing humanitarian care of violent inmates while still being in prison, and working to reform governmental policies to reduce wrongful imprisonment. This will provide crime recidivism and prevent systematic forms of racism by targeting minorities, while still keeping violent criminals in prisons. The proposition's resolution is invalid because he incorrectly defines the House, he does not abolish my definition of a prison, and his source supports my resolution. Therefore, I should win this debate. Thank you.